All right, all right. Let's go ahead and do a quick introduction while I try to share the screen.
Sure. All right, well, welcome. This is our masterclass on Holiday Manners 101 in 2024. So we're going to help you get ready for Thanksgiving and Christmas, as many of us host or attend celebrations at other people's houses that may have dogs. So either way, we've got a lot of information for you about preparing your dog and understanding a little bit about how to interact with other people's dogs when you go to their home. So it'll, teach you how to enjoy the holidays with your dogs without letting things ruin your plans.
Perfect. So we have done this several years in a row. So this is again 2024 version of our Holiday 101 Manners, and we're doing a Christmas and Thanksgiving, kind of putting it all together. So not only preparing when you're sitting at a table with your family, but also unwrapping presents with the kids. So we'll kind of go over how to prepare for that for both holidays. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we do, a quick introduction. I'm Yo Armendariz. I'm the owner of Canine Learning Academy. I absolutely love bringing master classes and workshops to the community. These are free, so feel free to share them with your friends, your family, or anyone that's got a dog. And with the holidays coming right around the corner, I know it's a week before Thanksgiving here, but at least you'll have some idea of like what to think about, and then you'll prepare for Christmas as well. And Corey, do a quick introduction of yourself.
My name is Pryor McGregor. I'm from the Toledo, Ohio area. I met Yo a couple of years ago when she was helping me out at a facility I worked for at the time, getting some programming ready. And now I work remotely, and I'm actually a former zookeeper, so I have a lot of insight into behavior on all different spectrums.
That's interesting. So most of the time, the zoos are actually closed on the holidays, right?
We're actually not. At least the zoo that I work for, we are now open 365 days a year.
Oh,
So
wow.
yes, you know how some people have tradition where they go to the theater, and see a new movie coming out
Yeah.
Thanksgiving evening. We've done that with my kids in the past. Our zoo has a fantastic lights display for Christmas, and so it actually opens
Oh.
tonight. And so it's becoming kind of a tradition for some families to visit the evening of Thanksgiving or even Christmas Eve. So yes, we are now open every day for people to make memories all days of the year.
That is fascinating. I didn't even know that. So that's good to
Yeah.
know. Yeah, I like to go to the movies on Thanksgiving. That's
Yeah.
kind of my thing. All right, so points for discussion, just so you know what we're talking about, and you can always pull this information out a little bit later, is understanding the holiday from your dog's point of view, because we are get so wrapped up on like, what we're going to do, how it's going to look, what we're going to feed, and all of that stuff that we forget that, yes, our dogs have their own point of view of this holiday. They don't actually know that it's a holiday. They're
Just
just like,
another day.
what's going on? So
Yeah.
problems that may come up. There's several. There's lots of different problems that come up that can happen if you don't prepare, and if you're not even aware of like what your dog is going through when they're going through it. Understanding behavior modification. We're basically going to be able to break down how to implement a program of training, if it's already happening, or how to prevent it. So we'll go again over common problems. We'll also talk about how to create a safe space for your dogs, because sometimes for most of our dogs that are still in training, this is going to be hard. This is going to be very challenging for them, and it most likely is not going to go the way that you would want it to go. So we're going to give you a backup plan. And then the last thing that we're going to discuss is just how to make it really special for them, and some alternatives. So just in case you don't have time to get them trained or to implement the kind of management needed, then we'll talk to you a little bit about how to make things special for them. So during the holidays, it's really, it can be exciting or stressful, both,
Both. It's
for
both.
especially if you've got kids, and you've got
Yes.
like, grandparents coming over and people you haven't seen maybe for the entire year. So, when we think about it, it's families all coming together, people that maybe you are close to, but also people that you don't see very often, and extended families, right? So you've
Right.
got neighbors and friends, and maybe you have a new child, or maybe they ask, they bring a puppy or a dog without telling you. So there's so many different things that can happen during the holidays. But if you break it down into these things as a trainer, as we're putting together what the dog needs, these are the most common things that happen during the holidays. So first, everyone gathers in the kitchen because like that's where it's all happening.
Yeah, that's where
So
all the food is.
yeah. So you've got food of all kinds of all sorts being dropped off in the kitchen or being cooked in the kitchen. People are maybe drinking a little bit, maybe they're eating, maybe they're dropping food, but it's all happening in the kitchen. You've got decorations around the house. So I've already decorated for Christmas, except my tree. I'm going to go do that in the next couple days. But like you've got decorations happening. So you've got these weird things that are being put in the house or outside the house, which your dog can be like, okay, what's that? Why is it moving? Why is it making a sound? Now, if they've never ever, we've got a lot of first time Christmas dogs. And if they've never seen a Christmas tree, it looks like any other bush they pee on
Yeah, how
outside.
confusing is that? It's like you're doing all this stuff and then you bring a tree in the house. Like, how could we not mess that
Yeah.
up?
And then it's got this really cool ribbon around it, like
Right.
it's a tug toy, right?
And those balls hanging from it
Yeah.
are fun.
Yeah. Is that like tennis ball? Like,
Exactly.
so it is really, it can be really distracting for a dog. Visitors coming in the home. So I know a lot of people that don't have anyone coming over all year. They're like, I can't practice, I can't even, I don't have any neighbors that come over anymore.
Right.
So I'm
Right.
like, okay, well, I'll knock on your door and pretend that I don't know you. But on the holiday, like during the holidays, you've got your door going in and out, 15, 20 times, just all throughout the day. So it can be like a completely different experience for our dogs. Um,
Yeah.
Gathering and opening gifts, right? So you've got the paper. I mean, we normally create an enrichment project for our dogs in the living room, and it's got to do with paper and
Yeah, it
unwrapping.
looks a
So
lot of like these presents.
yeah. So that is another thing that you might want to think about. Okay, we're going to open presents in the living room. What are we going to do with our dog? Then you've got the whole meal time. So if whether you're doing a Christmas or a Thanksgiving meal, you're going to be sitting at tables, or maybe you stand up. I mean, I don't know what it looks like at everyone's house, but just thinking about, okay, what about the dog? So, and then you've got kids playing. So I mean, what is it like with the kids? Do they bring kids over and now you've got, a ton of kids at your house, Corey?
Yeah, so well my kids are kind of the oldest in our family, but we do have a couple of younger kids that have, like grandkids that have come along. And one is the same age as my youngest daughter. So they're tearing through the house, screeching and screaming. And then there's a real little guy, he's not quite two, and he gets going with the kids too. And it does turn in, even with just a couple extra kids, it does turn into chaos. And they're
Okay.
right at the night, they're right at that perfect level for the dog to share. you know, the dogs can come right up and just
Grab
share.
the,
But
yeah,
yeah, they
yeah,
take, and the kids think it's fun to feed the dogs too. So then there's an extra battle there to try to keep the kids from tossing stuff to the dogs because they think it's fun.
yeah.
So yes, it's a general chaos.
And around Christmas time, I know with my grandson, he likes to open everything, right?
Oh
But he
yeah.
likes to get it all out of the box and start putting it together. So you've got toys, which, dog doesn't know whether it's their toys or your toys. And you've got playing, whether it's basketball, darts, or like you see here on this picture that we have in front of us, a kid's playing with the balloons. So we
Uh-huh.
just have to think about like that's the holidays for us.
Right.
And for our dogs, we need to start thinking about what it's going to look like. Now, that's if you're having it at your home, you can pretty much control. But what if you've decided to go to someone else's house, right? So you really got to think things through before you expose your dog, especially if they've never had the experience of the holidays. If this is their first holiday, you're going to want to make sure that you prevent a lot of these things from being an issue or problem. All right. common problems. I mean, there's a lot, but here are
Yeah.
just a few. And we're gonna give you a formula or give you some what to do instead. So we've got rushing guests when they arrive. So you've got the excitement of someone knocking at the door, which
Mhm.
normally the dog is like, oh my God,
Yeah. Clearly
who
they know
is
what
it?
that means. Somebody's here.
Yeah.
Let's go see.
Yeah, then you've got them coming in, possibly with food, with presents, with this, and you've got two or three people out the door. It's not just one. So you've
Mhm.
got your dog rushing through the door, whether they stop and jump on the person that's there, or maybe they just go on and now they're out in the street.
Yeah. Yep.
So you've got the running out the door. You've got begging for food. I mean, gosh, there's so many good smells, turkey
Yeah.
and ham
And
and
it's
all
all
of,
day long.
yeah.
For most of us, it kind of sits out, right? And people continue to nibble, or there's appetizers before dinner, and then there's desserts, and stuff tends to be out throughout the whole event.
Yeah. And again, if you're drinking, sometimes you're not using your best judgment, you're not paying attention, and you get into a
Yeah.
conversation with your uncle or aunt, and you're just like get into it, and you just completely forget, oh my God, my dog.
Yeah.
So just being mindful. Begging for food is a big one. Dogs are going to try to get their nose as close as possible to that smell. Like, well,
Yep.
maybe. And then they give you the little like sad eyes, like, oh gosh, if I look, a certain way, perhaps. And then there's just
Yeah.
there's always someone that's going to give food
Yes.
to the dog, and it's all
Yes.
it takes. Knocking over grandma, it's knocking over anyone, so a small child or
Right.
anyone that's just not expecting it, or if you're wearing white pants and you've got a dog that jumps on you, so that's a very common problem. Stealing food, so stealing food happens, that's probably the one I hear the most. My dog stole food, or I had a really upset family where they had two dogs, and the dogs would actually resource guard, but they would eat
Mhm.
at the coffee table, and then they would eat, the dogs were sitting quietly, but of course if you get up or move around, you forget your food is there. Dogs are
Mhm.
going to just sneak on over there and grab
Right.
some
Yeah.
food. They can also steal food from the counter, which is the next one, counter surfing. Counter surfing just basically means a dog that hangs out by the counter, on the counter, next to the counter, because that's where the good stuff happens.
Yep.
Resource guarding, what I just talked about earlier, is just if the dog does get a hold of something or they think it's theirs, they're going to start showing their teeth, growling, all of that kind of stuff. And that's where it leads to the bites. And this is another common one that we hear with kids and dogs, especially around food. Um,
Mhm.
an overly excited dog, like, I mean, who wouldn't be excited? So you've got a dog that's never maybe experienced Christmas or Thanksgiving. You've got all these people in the house. It's going to be hard for them to not bark for attention or run around and knock over somebody with their tail. Chasing kids, kids are not mindful of like what they're doing. They're just in the moment. So they'll go running around the house, or, overly excited about something that they're doing or something that they got. So you've got now kids that are being chased by a dog, and then, of course, jumping up on guests. Anything else you want to add to that?
Not that particular list, but there's like, as you're kind of reading through it, I'm like checking the things off in my head that like, okay, one of my dogs does this and one of my dogs does this. So you're not necessarily going to see all of these things, but you could see a lot of them. And in just different ways, of presenting themselves in different ways. I have
Yeah,
small dogs, so the rushing out the door is a concern because they get through legs easier than a large dog. So being aware of, what is more than likely to happen for your dog.
true, 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 true. So go ahead, Corey. What takes priority?
Well, it really depends, doesn't it? So, when we're preparing for a holiday, okay, I host Thanksgiving dinner every year and I host Christmas breakfast every year. I have the space to do it, so I have a whole list of things that I'm trying to pay attention to. I'm shopping, I'm coming up with the menu, I'm getting, making sure we have enough chairs and counting the number of people that are going to be. Do I have enough plates? All of these things that rattle around in my mind. There are just going to be some things that I'm not thinking about. And for a lot of us, that might be, what do we do with the dog? I didn't think about that, like I didn't make a plan for the dog. So it just depends on what you've got going on, whether you're hosting, whether you're leaving for a period of time, and you got to make a plan for your dog because you're not going to be there to care for them. What takes priority, and somewhere in there we have to think about our dogs and get them in on that list so we have a planning
Yep,
ahead.
perfect. So prevention is key. Prevention is basically if you can prevent the problem from ever happening, whether it's counter surfing or running through the streets, um, you're way ahead of the game. Most people do not plan about their dog. They just assume the dog's going to be fine. It's any other day for them, but it's really not. So if your dog has already learned something like counter surfing or jumping up on people, you're going to be extra careful of like and thinking it all the way through of what you're going to do to prevent it from happening on that day. Right. So just like humans, if you have a particular way, like I like my coffee with oat milk and, I like it hot, but
Hot.
I am going to go do a blood draw and they're like, you can have black coffee. So I made myself some black coffee and I was like, oh, this is just
No,
nasty.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do
Yeah.
it.
I was like, I'll just wait till
Yeah.
10 hours later before I can actually. So we're kind of like, the same way we do that, what we like is what we go to. It's going to be the thing that we do all the time. It's our habit. Dogs are the same way. So once they have had an experience, good or bad, they're most likely, if it was a good experience, they're going to do it over and over and over. So preventing them from darting out the house and having a great time exploring would be the best way to make sure that it doesn't keep happening, right? We
Most
like
definitely.
to we like to refrain from using any kind of punishment in training. So you're going to see a lot of the suggestions that we have is a force-free, more holistic approach to behavior modification. It is not their fault. Most of the time, it's
Most
our
of the time,
fault.
right? Yeah.
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 So let's go into some of the common problems, starting off with counter surfing. So if we think of counter surfing, you have a picture here of this dog name is Tiny, and mama is she's a Shar Pei. Mama is cooking in or fixing their food in the kitchen, and notice that Tiny got it has her paws up on the counter, so she is counter surfing. And what that experience like for her is she's trying to get her nose as close as possible to the yummy stuff, which is going to be her food, right? This is sometimes what we overlook it. We're like, we don't think anything of it. But what happens when you're not there, what happens is your dog goes, well, let me go check and see if they left a spot
Right.
there. Now dogs start to go to the counter all the time. All they have to do is steal one time, and then it's the go-to thing. They start
Yeah.
hanging it out in the kitchen. I know little dogs that climb their way up to the counter. In fact, I had another client said, "Oh my gosh, I walked in and God, what was the dog's name? Uh Lola, I think it was Lola. She's like, she was on the counter, like on the counter. So that's if the dog doesn't find anything, that's awesome. But it is very natural for them to go look for their resources, right?
Right.
So
Right.
smaller dogs are going to jump all four paws on the counter. Larger dogs, they don't have to do anything. They could just like a Great Dane can simply just, yeah,
Oh yeah, just put
put
their
it,
face right up there.
yeah. So if you've got a nice juicy turkey on one of those beautiful platters and you sit it on the counter because you don't, you're not ready to bring it to the table, but then you all go inside to the dining area and you say grace, you gotta watch what your dog is doing because that's
Right.
like super tempting, right?
Yes.
So, for the problem of counter surfing, a behavior modification plan is what to do if the dog is already counter surfing. Preventing it will also go through as well. So, step one is implementing a management because you don't want the dog to keep practicing putting their paws up on the counter or hanging out by the counter. So, management is we're going to go over a couple management ideas, but management means you're going to prevent it 100%. So, sometimes you're going to have to be very you're going to have to come up with different, different options. You might have a plan one, plan two, plan three. And you're going to want to make sure that you can outsmart your dog.
Yeah, that's it. Staying a step ahead.
Step two, train the preferred behavior, because if you train the preferred behavior and you reinforce it, your dog is going to go to that instead. So prevent what you don't want them to do from happening, then train the preferred behavior, and then you can proof it, and then you can remove management. So in the of the problem of counter surfing, if we think of management, how do we change this unwanted behavior of hanging in the kitchen? Well, use a baby gate to block off the kitchen. Use an X pen to prevent your dog from going in the kitchen, or put the dog in their crate in the other room when you're cooking, right? That keeps the dog out of the kitchen. Instead of get out, stop it, knock it off, instead of doing that, we're talking about completely preventing them from being in the kitchen would be a management. Any other management ideas that you can throw in there?
I mean, if it's you that's in the kitchen, maybe you can have your dog on a harness and a leash and then have someone else holding on to them in another area of the house so that they cannot access the kitchen. It's another option. Or maybe someone else is, you
Or
give them the
tether?
job of cooking and or tethering them to a piece of furniture, like the sofa leg or something like that to keep them from leaving the space you've assigned. Because you may not have these supplies on hand. And then running out and getting them last minute may be inconvenient, but you probably
Yeah,
have a harness and a leash that you can use.
that's perfect. Just tethering them outside of the kitchen when you're cooking. Awesome. So then if you go, okay, what do I want my dog to do instead? Well, the alternative behavior would be to have them stay outside of the kitchen on their own. So this is your boundary training. In this case, this is Bentley being trained to lay down on a rug. These are Diane's beautiful legs right there. And
She's
she's
so
cooking
thick.
in the, yeah, she's cooking in the kitchen. And we started implementing this for her own dogs. What I was showing her is that as soon as you go through the kitchen and you get off that rug, dog lays down. That's
Mhm.
all you're teaching is a down on a rug every time you go into the kitchen. And it was a very easy skill to train, and it's very easy to get them to do it all the time because that's where she preps their food, right? So that would be my preferred behavior is then you can remove the gate and stuff like that. Right where her foot is, that's where a gate would normally be because the dog would want to go into the kitchen to get on the counter. So
Right.
that gate can be now removed if the dog always lays down on that rug when you walk in the kitchen. Okay, going to the next one. Common problem of stealing food. Let me just go back to saying one more thing. If your dog does not counter surf because they're a puppy, you'll still want to then implement management instead. Just never have them going in the kitchen. They don't will never learn to counter surf. All right. The problem of stealing food. So if you're hosting Thanksgiving or you've got guests snacking, some guests will stand up and eat from a plate, but some people will sit down on your couch and they'll put their food down, which is right, like Corey said, at their dog's level, or they'll drop food, right?
Mhm.
And all the dog has to do is take food one time. And I mean, it's very natural for them to do
Yeah,
like, well, you gave it
yeah,
to me, right?
right.
This is this is why you'll see like dogs hang out by a toddler's like
That's
little,
what I was just gonna say. It did not, when my kids were little and at that age, it did not take long for the dogs to realize that begging from us was not gonna get them anything, but if they sat directly under the high chair, the kids thought it was hilarious to drop food, They had
yeah,
a great relationship, but
yeah.
that high chair was a problem.
So it's all, I mean, it is good because it built the relationship, but
Yes,
on the problem of the dogs then learning to steal food, I mean, they can't resist. It's at their level or it's on the floor already, and they're opportunists. They're going to go after that food. So it's an invitation to go ahead and take it. So we have to be careful with not punishing them. It is not their fault. It is just totally natural for a dog or any animal to see something that they have access to and to take it, right?
right.
They're acting on their instincts. Can you think of an animal at the zoo that, I mean, If it's there, they're going to
If it's
take
there, they're
it.
gonna eat it. Yeah, absolutely. It's for any of us. I mean, we're not gonna necessarily get down on the floor and eat food, but like if you're hungry, and it's not, like you said, it's a natural instinct. If there's food available, why not eat it? Especially with animals and having more of a survival instinct,
Yeah,
like you said, acting on instinct. It's really not even a choice that they're making. It's like, oh, I
exactly.
better get that. Don't know when I'm gonna have my next meal, kind of a
Yeah.
mentality.
So don't be shocked when your dog takes that food and runs away. If they're running away, it's not that they're trying to make you mad or annoy you. It's very natural for them to run away to go and eat that. Most likely they've done it before and you've yelled at them or screamed at them. So
Yeah.
they've learned to run away.
Yeah.
All right. So, what do we do if that is the case of dog that's already learned to steal food? You implement management, right? Then you're going to train an alternative behavior and then you're going to proof the behavior. Now, this particular behavior mod formula and program, I have like there's three different things that you can train. So if this is a problem for you, I would recommend writing these down in your notes so that you can implement them and there's different layers. So management would be telling everybody, sticky notes, whatever you need to do. Go, hey guys, we have a dog in the room. Do not leave your food out. If you drop food, please pick it up pretty quickly. Um, if you've got food in the kitchen that you put on a counter, put it in containers or put it in the pantry. Just get in the habit of putting things away. Close off the area completely. So whatever room that is that people are going to be having food or you got, you cook or whatever, that's where I would close that area off. And if you've got a foodie dog that's really learned to steal, possibly resource guarding, that dog really should not be present in that room. So put away the dog in any area where food might be.
Okay.
There's a lot to add on to that. You can still add the tethering, to a side. You can do all of that, but like if a dog has access to the food, they're going to steal it all the time, 100% of the time, uh, unless they've learned not to. So here is what you would train. So the trained behavior is called a leave it, right? If you see that you've dropped food, you can say something like leave it. Now, here's how we trained it is we use a non-food object at first and get that behavior happening, put it on a cue, and the cue that we used here is leave it. After we've implemented the cue and the dog understands the concept, we then start adding food. And in this case, we started with the low grade food like kibble and rewarded with a higher grade food, like I think he's doing freeze dried here. This is Loki. So he went from placed, there was a mistake there. I think he just bounced it into his, but
Yeah.
he's placing the food on the floor to dropped food because we're trying to replicate what it's going to really be like in the holiday. Leave it to us means you can never ever have it. So when
Mm.
he says leave it, that food is being picked up. And at the beginning stages, he's picking it up immediately. Now he's dropping it like it would be if you were dropping it from standing position. But you've got to practice this, and then we start practicing going away from them and dropping food, whether because sometimes you're not able to be right next to your dog. So we have to practice this again in an environment where your dog feels comfortable and safe. There's dropped food going by. He is saying, leave it. Now, what you don't see is that with more and more repetitions, Robert is not even saying the word leave it anymore. It's becoming what we call an automatic leave it. And here he goes out of sight. So you do want to be able to have a dog never pick up food on the floor. You'll also have to practice completely going out of sight because when the dog is left alone, they're most likely to make a different uh they'll do things differently.
Yes, make a different choice.
So a trained behavior of auto leave it comes next. So here we are in the kitchen, in the room that we want to use. So we've generalized it. And we're doing this with Moose, who's still under 20 weeks. I think he's just about 20 weeks old. So still learning the concept. But we started using food. and she's dropping blueberries, which is not
Mhm.
supposed to be a low value, but he actually does like blueberries. And what we're getting to the point is that if we drop food, he is to always leave it. So that's that auto leave it. She's cutting up. She's also changing how close the food is from him because this is a new concept for him. We're making sure that sometimes it's farther away. If it's too close, he seems to like want to go after it. But he did pick up this, and then we practiced this several times. And then within the week of this video that we shot with Moose, we took him to an outdoor cafe and did the same thing. Dropped food. He was laying down on his mat, so he got really good at this.
Good.
The last part of training this, so you've got your trained cue of leave it, where you have to say it if you drop it. You've got your auto leave it, where your dog leaves it if you drop it. But we have also, it's called take it, where even when you present food in front of them, they're waiting to hear the cue that, yes, you can have it. So that's much more advanced. I can put an entire turkey, a plate of turkey in Bentley's food, or in front of him, and he'll look up at me and he'll wait for me to either say, basically yes or no. So there you hear me saying, you don't hear me, but I'm saying leave it or take it. So those are 3 trained behaviors that you can do instead of a dog stealing. Pretty cool, huh?
Yes. And I will say, if you are mindful of developing the skill, like even with the original leave it and you're having to say it, you'll find that over time, if you're really consistent with it, that auto leave it kind of develops naturally. It did for, it did for my dogs. And then it was, at a certain point, I was just like, wow, you're really good at that. Like I just realized that they had just gotten really good at it. And then it was being able to give them permission for things. And it's kind of cool to see the progression.
Yeah. Uh, When when we train this all the way through, the dog just looks at you like
Yeah.
you've dropped something and they're like, hello, there's
Yeah.
something down here. They ask, they're like, can I
Yes.
have this? Is what they're saying. All right, let's go into the next problem behavior of jumping up when guests arrive. So, Corey, just off the top of your head, why do dogs jump on people when they come through the door?
They are jumping on people because when we interact with dogs, all of that attention is coming from our face, our voices, our eye contact, our smiles. They know that attention is coming from, up here. And to get to it, they jump up just to get closer to that attention.
Yeah.
So it's really about if if you're gonna give them that attention when they're jumping up, this is jumping up is gonna stick. That's a default behavior.
And it happens quite a bit when your dog is a puppy, when you've got a
Yes.
young puppy, you're like, oh my God, oh, don't worry, I don't
Yeah.
mind, right? And
Right.
then
It's
that,
cute first and they're small, so it doesn't bother us. But
yeah,
down the road, we've got a
but
bad habit.
it is the most common question I get asked all the time. And I just recently, it's like the one that's been asked almost every conversation I've had this in the last 2 weeks has been, how do I get my dog to stop jumping on people when they walk through the door? So most pet parents don't understand why it's happening. Until I go, well, what do you do when your dog, jumps up on you? So then they start realizing, oh gosh, I've been rewarding this for this whole time. My
Yeah.
dog's, is a year old now and they're still jumping up on me. So once you understand why they're doing it, then you'll understand how important it is to change the gestures that you're doing when you do walk through the door. So going back to our formula, behavior mod formula, let's just talk a little bit about the management. So implementing management. So you've got someone walking through the door and you don't want them to be jumped on. So one of the easiest management tools is to put your dog on a leash. Just
Yep.
have the leash on the front door. And as soon as someone has texted you or said, hey, I'm coming in or something, you grab that leash and leash up your dog, right?
Mhm.
That's the easiest way to get that that constant jumping to not happen. Second, put them away. Say, oh, someone's at the door. Like, okay, go, hey, you guys go put the dogs away. So
Yep.
that can be a very common routine that you do. Someone's at the door, go put the dogs away. I know a lot of people do it if they have a dog that's overly reactive and you've got a plumber coming in or something like that. But if you can get in the habit of thinking that way every time guests come in, then your dog's not going to keep practicing jumping up on people. Any other management that you can think of really quickly?
It's a lot of the same kinds of things, keeping the dogs away from the door in general. So baby gates to keep them from going over to the door. And then having that conversation with your guests coming in on what they should do if the dog does XYZ. Like, please do not pet him if he jumps on you. You know, we're working on getting him to stop. So don't give him any attention, that kind of a thing. Or, you know, if you really want to greet the dog, get down low so that they're not jumping up. You're able to meet them at their level to give them that attention. So having that conversation with your guests in advance too, to help prevent.
I love that when I'm walking through someone's house and I'm going through for the very first time, like a consultation, and they've got a door dasher or something like that, or I just don't want, you know, if they've got kids in the house. I always talk about the dog being running out the door. So
Mhm.
having a double gate setup, you know, you've got your
Yeah.
front door and then you've got a gate. The dog just never gets access to the door. That's brilliant. Perfect. All right. So what do we train instead? We'll train your dog. Hey, someone's here. Go to your spot. That's easy. That's like the easiest thing to train. I do
Mhm.
train there's a lot of different things that we can train, but to me, that's the simplest one to do. If I have a dog that's a barker, I'll usually train them to go put something in their mouth.
Yeah, grab a toy.
You have a toy. So once your dog is trained to go to their place, you can then, you know, keep them calm for a little bit, and then you can release them and they can go and say hi to the visitor if that's what you want them to do. So I did record a video of what that looks like. So what we did here for management, we have the doorbell's not supposed to be rung. We said text when you arrive. So she's texting. So here we have Ellie is training the dog to go to the bed, and then she's just going to yell out so that the dog does not have access to the visitor coming in. This is Hannah coming in. And so see the space, you can see that the dog has no care of who just walked through the door because the reinforcement's coming from the handler. So here Ellie is telling her, hey, thanks for coming in that way. My dog is in training. So she's talking a little bit about that. Now they're both going to go sit down on the couch. You've got to tell your visitor where and why. Hey, go on over there. I'm going to keep my dog busy over here. Sit on that side of the couch. She's 100% preventing Hannah from getting jumped on from a new dog. So she sits and she's training this dog to stay put while this dog is a young puppy, less
Yeah.
than 20 weeks. I'm training this dog to stay put, and Hannah will 100% not get jumped on. So, questions about that one? That was
No,
good.
I think that is one of the first behaviors you should probably start working on when you get a new dog or you get a new puppy. It's going to be one of the most important ones because it can prevent so many things, not just this one particular issue.
Yeah. Get in the habit of having your dog go to a spot when someone's coming through the door. And that could be just everyone that lives at the house. Just tell them to text. You can practice it, with people that are living there. All right. Another common problem is overly excited when in the house. So go ahead and go through this one because I know this triggers your dogs.
It does. I have young dogs that are excitable and they are triggered by activity. So thinking of this upcoming holiday, I have 20 people coming to my house, which is probably the most people we've had in the house at one time. So that's going to be exciting. People that they don't see very often, which are going to be exciting. And then because we have children and there's going to be a lot of activity going on, that level of excitement stays elevated. So the dogs can be triggered by that amount of activity and be overly excited. You know, when we talk about getting the zoomies and they're just racing through the house because of that level of excitement, it's something to be aware of and to think about. It's going to be one of my battles on Thanksgiving Day. So again, we're talking about management. Your family is going to take precedent pretty much over everything else. You want to make sure your guests are comfortable. You want to be able to focus on being a good host, serving your guests, and then relaxing and having conversation with your guests once the meal is done. So you may not be thinking about what's going on with your dog. You want to consider putting your dog in another room, putting them in a crate, giving them a safe, a space where they can go and settle down. A lot of times this excitement is related to them not being able to calm down or not being able to effectively regulate their energy and their emotions, and they may need you to help them, especially with younger dogs. Keeping your dog not real close to you, tethering them and holding on to that leash while you're sitting and relaxing, having that mat right next to you where you can drop treats for them while they're right there next to you is a great way to kind of break up that level of energy where they can kind of come down and reset. Those are just some really good ways to manage it. Using a positive interrupter or training a positive interrupter is a great way to kind of do exactly what that says, interrupt behavior. So your dog is getting the zoomies and you want to get them to stop. Well, instead of screaming and shouting and yelling no and chasing after them, make it a positive thing. Yell out, hey, you want a cookie? That's what I do. I have a barker when she's in the backyard. She likes to bark at the other dogs and then just say, let's get a cookie. And there they come straight into the house. So it's effective for a lot of things and interrupting behaviors that you don't want to see. So if this is something you'd like to train, you're going to want to start in a quiet area of your home and make the sound. So whether it's going to be a word you yell out, like I say cookie, or a sound that you're going to make, you want to make that sound and then give your dog something of high value, like a really tasty treat every time you make that sound. And you're going to need to repeat that a lot. When your dog starts to show that they recognize that, you're going to practice that at random times throughout the day. Random places in the room, no matter what your dog is doing, make the sound, reach for that favorite reward, and then have a little party when they respond. In time, you'll find that your dog is rushing to, like I said, my dog races across the yard from the other side if she hears me yell it. They'll come running right over when they hear that sound or word. You'll be able to eventually get your dog's attention by saying your interrupter no matter what they are doing, which is going to look really impressive. This will give you the chance to direct them to a better activity, redirect them onto something else and prevent them from doing what they were doing before.
Perfect. All right. Rules for visitors. So you'll want to implement some rules. And I think, Corey, you were going to go over some of the common rules that you should just think about having, maybe even on a piece of paper, handing it out to every single person that walks in. So go ahead.
I think one thing that some of us may be uncomfortable with when we have people coming over that may not necessarily be dog people or animal people, we may not want to implement a lot of regulations on how we have them in our home, but we have to remember that this is our dog's home. They're in their home and their environment. So we have to do what we need to protect them and make sure that they're comfortable in their own home. We kind of touched on it when we were talking about jumping up, is asking guests not to give dogs attention when they jump up or do something. So maybe there are some common things you say, my dog might do this, this, and this. Please don't give them any attention when they do. Another thing is giving them some direction on how to interact with your pet. So you can kind of see in the picture on the bottom with the little boy that has his arm around the dog, that dog really doesn't look comfortable with it. So asking or giving some guidelines on how people should interact with your dog, like please don't hug them. They really don't like it when you kiss them in the face, or my dog doesn't like it when you touch their ears, or please don't grab their tail, things like that you can prep visitors ahead of time to prevent any issues. And then again, just implementing some of those management things. If my dog is in their crate, don't stick your fingers in. If my dog is on their mat, in their bed, that's where they are invisible. That's where they go to not be disturbed. So whatever kind of things you have that you do in your daily routine with your dog, ask your visitors or kind of make them aware of what they can expect when they come over.
So really quickly, as you were going over the rules for visitors. Let's just say you've got a family that's got little kids and the kids are not listening and the parents are just having a really good time because it can get frustrating because they're
Yeah.
doing it to your dog.
Yeah.
So, how do you address in a kind way without getting frustrated what's going on with the young kids and your dogs? What's your go-to?
So I would probably, and I'm really good with kids, and I kind of have a good idea of how I should interact with them and give boundaries to them. So for me, I would just sit down with the kids and say, "Hey guys, I know it's gonna be really exciting to have the dog here, but listen, sometimes things could go sideways if it gets too crazy." And so having the conversation with the kids, and then giving gentle reminders, maybe up until the point that you can't, and then you want to address it with their parents, or you just remove your dog from the situation. If it's something that's going to keep happening, and you can't necessarily give 100% of your focus to it,
Yeah.
maybe the dog needs to go into a separate space so that, because ultimately it's going to, other people I find are going to view it as the dog has done something wrong, right? If we
Right.
snap or we bite or
Yeah.
something like that, it's the dog's problem, right?
Yeah.
We hear that a lot. So to prevent things from getting to that point and making your dog feel like they have to respond in that way, just removal. It's probably the best way to
Yeah.
go.
So having that backup plan, I used to bring my van when I would go to Thanksgiving and I brought Bentley, but I was like, if this gets if I
Mhm.
want to play cards or if I want to do this and I'm now putting my dog in a situation where he's too close to people or whatever,
Mhm.
or too close to the kitchen. So I would bring my van so I could put him in there and have him someplace comfortable. So
Right.
I love that. You can't control some of the time the kids or even the people if
Right.
they're
Oh yeah.
having a good time and they're not listening to you. Don't get frustrated. Just put your dog away and prevent them from being exposed to whatever it is that they're having to be exposed to. So great. All right. So other things to consider is like, what do you do when you want to make yourself some food or you're prepping food for your family, right? You've got to put food on a plate for I've got to do that for my dad and my stepmom. I'll go and make them a plate. It's like, what do you do with your dog, especially if you're the
Right.
one watching your dog? When you're sitting down for a meal and where you're going to sit, you want to be mindful of where you need to sit in order for you to have your dog either close by or if you're going to put them far away, where are they going to hang out? If there's kids and they're running around and it's not your home, or even if it is your home, again, just like Corey said, what do you want to do with your dog so they're not having the stress that comes with having kids run in the house? And then the day of the festivities, what are some of the things that you can have your dog do to kind of just be a little more relaxed and even capable of being there? I just got a message right now from a pet parent that's got a young puppy, 14 weeks, and they're like, "Hey, can you keep them for Thanksgiving?" They just realized, right? Like, oh wow, I'm going to be doing all these things and I've got this puppy that can't just stay home all day. So we have a winter camp, a holiday camp. So we are open Thanksgiving and Christmas and stuff like that for this very reason of we want our families to have a good time. We don't want the puppies to be put into a room for 8 hours. They're
Right. Exactly.
but having someone that you choose to like stay with your dog and like you're going to take care of the dog, we'll rotate. I'll do 1 hour, you do another, but just come up with a plan, guys. All right. So here are some of the common things that you might want to think about is maybe placing your dog behind a gate when you are making a plate for yourself or for someone else. Or in the second picture, you can tether them to something as you walk away. Again, practice this way before you need it, guys. So
Yeah.
if your dog has never been tethered before, you need to practice it because they're going to pull the whole
Yeah, that's gonna
couch.
be so frustrating for them.
Yeah. Or the third option is handing off to a friend, right? So three options for the exact same ask. I want to go make a plate for myself. One, put them in another room, place them behind a gate. Two, tether them to a piece of furniture that's not going to move. Three, hand them off to a friend. Practice it. This is us in class. This is last year practicing that same thing in class. All right, another one. When you sit down for your meal, where are you going to put your dog? Do you put them in another room? Well, practice it. Will they be comfortable in another room? Are they going to bark? Are they going to bite the floor and the walls and eat your 8 baseboards? Under your table, is that a good spot for them? Do you have kids that are going to be under the table? Do you have so, and then the last one is maybe bring in a pop-up crate. So if you're at someone's house, can you bring a pop-up crate and put them in there? So think about what you want to do and then practice it in a good controlled environment where there's not a lot of stuff going on so that your dog can get some repetitions in before the event. So here we are practicing. This is last year again, practicing hanging out at the table while eating. I'm telling them to just practice. There's no food involved at first because we just want the behavior to happen. So they're settling out at a spot. They've already added some distraction, some distance. There have a couple dogs on the floor at the same time. Curtis is walking around because that's what people do when you're at a table. You'll have people walking around, getting up, sitting back down. So again, just practice, practice, practice. Eventually start to practice with real food and practice right now every time you eat. If this is something you dream of doing with your dog, then start the practice now before the event actually is here. All right.
When
Corey,
it comes to
safety.
safety, yes, quite a few things to be aware of. You may want to do a little bit of research on those kinds of foods that are dangerous for your dogs to have. There are some obvious ones, things that we know, like grapes. I think most of us that own dogs know grapes are very dangerous for dogs. And cooked bones. No bones. Don't give any bones that have been, through the oven, from your turkey or anything. They're dangerous. They splinter when your dog bites into them. But things like lesser known things like garlic and onions are also very unsafe for dogs, and we tend to season our food with a lot of that. At least I do. I put that in a lot of my food because we like it. So we don't necessarily think about those things in advance. You could, and I do this, prep a little Thanksgiving meal for your dog in advance that does have food safe stuff, like sweet potatoes that haven't been seasoned, turkey that hasn't been
Turkey,
seasoned, things like that, so they get their own special meal.
green beans.
Yes, lots of things. So to just be aware of what your dog cannot have. Try to avoid having those things, chocolate, alcohol, additional things to be aware of. Be aware of what your dog is doing, where they're at, what are they doing? What's that rule about silence is golden except from a toddler, same thing with your puppy. If you haven't heard from your puppy in a while, maybe you should go figure out what they're doing. Did they snatch something and now they're off in another room with it and they're, and it's now an unsafe situation. Those are the things to be aware of. And one other thing I kind of thought about as we were talking is we were talking about rules for guests. Tell your guests not to try to take anything from your dog when they have something. So if the dog does get a hold of something, ask them to not try to take it. That's going to be a dangerous situation for your guests. I know for me personally, I'm really the only one that can take things from my dog safely. Even like my husband and kids don't do so well, they just don't have the same relationship. So they need to come get you and have you determine what's going to happen next. If all else fails, like you already said, we have that holiday camp, send your dog over to us. It will reduce your stress immensely. Now we don't have to worry about where the dog is, what they're doing, who's feeding them what, who are they jumping on, and every minute of the day, send them away, send them to us so that we can give them their own fun. They're gonna have tons of fun. There's all kinds of activities planned during holiday camp. And that will reduce stress for everybody.
So true.
All right, and then management for Christmas trees, this kind of does go along with safety too. That tree hanging out in your room that can easily tip over can become unsafe. So if you're looking at a Christmas celebration, we've kind of been thinking about Thanksgiving because it's coming up, but Christmas is also around the corner. So things you can do, set
I
up a
like
gate.
this
Take
picture.
that X pen that we were talking about, set it up around the tree so that they can't get to it, especially if it's your puppy's first Christmas. This prevented a lot of issues for me when I was raising my puppies. They never got to the tree. They never had the opportunity to take things off the tree and chew on the tree and chew on the presents and things like that because we blocked them. Once that gate was down, I set up a space for them to have other things to do. You know, they go to their mat, they have a chew toy, like when we're opening those presents, and offer them something of high value to do away from the tree. And you can also train a recall away from the tree. You see that your dog's getting a little too close for comfort, train something specific, like away, or just that recall to get them to come back to you away from the tree. One other thing that I still do this to this day, even though my dogs are really good, they don't mess with anything typically. I avoid putting presents under the tree until like the day before Christmas, just because I don't want them. I mean, it's hanging out. It's just temptation. So kind of remove that temptation and avoid putting presents down until you need to have them there. That'll reduce their interest around the tree, I think.
Yeah, I like seeing all the creative ways that people block off their trees, but I would love to actually see a Christmas tree on the ceiling. I think that would be really funny. All right, presents and decor, same thing, preventing them. I think you've already kind of pointed this out, maybe not putting them out until the day of. If you've got ribbon around your tree, it just looks like a tug toy for most dogs that have never really experienced the holiday. All they have to do is pull that ribbon one time, the whole tree is going to come down. So if if you're adamant about having your dog be a part of the decorations and decor every time, just make sure that you're with them, that they don't have time alone with that access to the tree and the decorations and the presents to prevent anything from really bad happening. When you can't train, manage, if you're not able to train or you don't have time to train or you just didn't do it, manage them 100% of the time. Don't give them access to the things that could possibly, especially like a tree or something like that, or your Thanksgiving meal. Just make sure that you have them managed so they don't have access to it. If all else fails, create a safe space. By now, your dog should already have a place that they're totally comfortable retreating to alone without you because you might be busy. So
Oh,
you're
my
going to,
audio, I'm sorry, my audio just cut out.
okay. Can you hear me now? Hmm. You can't hear me? Well, I'm going to assume that you can still hear me. So we're going to go into creating a safe space without you. Make sure that they're comfortable with it. To do that, you want to have a location that you feel comfortable with. Let's see.
All right, so looking at creating a safe space. We've talked a lot about different options for management, but creating that safe space where your dog becomes more or less invisible to everyone else. And that's kind of what we're talking about when when my dog isn't in his bed, that's his time to get away from everything. Some dogs may be okay with that just being in the corner of the room away from everyone else. Some dogs are going to need a location that is completely different from where the activity is happening. So if you have a large bathroom that you can set up their crate or their bed or a walk-in closet in your bedroom, a laundry room, something like that that takes them away from that busy space is going to be helpful. It needs to be quiet, away from open windows, close those curtains. If you have a TV, maybe if you're in your bedroom, you have a TV, maybe put the TV on or bring a white noise machine in or something like that to mask the noise that's going on in the home. And then monitor your dog, check on them frequently, but give them space that's large enough for them to be comfortable and able to hide if they need to, and make it positive. So while we only have about a week before Thanksgiving, you still have a week to practice this. And a lot of our students practice this on a regular basis. It's just kind of putting a little bit more emphasis on it and creating a little bit more energy and activity in the house to replicate that Thanksgiving and holiday celebration. But if you can start weeks in advance, make it positive by feeding your dog in that space, giving them chews in that space, yak bones and things like that. Games, and bringing items in that help your dog to feel safe. So their favorite bedding, favorite toys, those kinds of things. Make it a safe, positive space that they're going to want to choose when they're feeling overwhelmed. Or if you need to remove them, they can still feel comfortable. All right, so what to do the day of the festivities to help kind of take the edge off. Well, here's some things I'm planning to do. I'm planning to make up some enrichment for my dogs. I'm going to use the licking mats that we have. I'm going to make up several of them, keep them in the freezer, give them mental stimulation. So do a couple of training sessions that morning. Get them out for a walk and get them some exercise. If you're in a cold area like I am, and hopefully it's not too cold on Thanksgiving, maybe you just need to come up with some activities that are in the home to get them some physical exercise. But mentally stimulating them, physically stimulating them, and having some enrichment on hand when people come over or when you sit down to the table, something of their own that's going to keep them in their safe space a little longer maybe than they normally would is going to go a long way. So you can see in some of the videos we have going on here, they're playing some Find It games. There's probably treats inside of those cones. The dogs are sniffing out. Sniffing is an excellent way to get mental stimulation for dogs. It's a great brain game. And whatever else your dog really enjoys. Come up with some things that they enjoy. Another thing you'll need to do is make sure the holidays are fun for your pets. So we are currently in about halfway through a Christmas story tricks class with our students that is actually free for everyone to join. If you want to check out our website, we have the link to register there. And this is a video of Yo and Bentley rolling out the wrapping paper. It's one of the tricks in our tricks class. So rolling out the wrapping paper, having your dog help you wrap Christmas presents, get them involved in what you've got going on, join our tricks class, create a little holiday cheer, and have fun. Try to eliminate as much stress as possible by planning ahead. All right. So I think that kind of wraps it up for this year's Holiday Manners 101 Masterclass. If you have questions or you want more information on our services, such as that holiday camp is running now and will go all the way through January 5th. So if you're going out of town for a couple of weeks around Christmas time, give us a call. Spaces are filling up quickly, especially the closer we get to Thanksgiving. But we have for 24/7 care. There's going to be enrichment, training, field trips. I think there's a Thanksgiving feast with the staff coming up too, that the dogs are going to be able to participate in, which will be really great. So your dogs are going to get a lot of practice on those manners if you set them on over, reduce that stress for you, and give your dog the gift of having their holiday celebration with some other friends. All right, well, thank you guys for joining us. We'll have this recording available for you guys to watch if you were not able to join us today. But happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays.